Welcome to the First Time Facilitator podcast. Whether you're a first-time facilitator or a seasoned pro, listen in for tips and tricks to make a bigger impact at the next workshop you deliver. And now, your host. She loves the guided runs feature on the Nike running app, Leanne Hughes.
Hello and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Leanne Hughes, and I'm here to help you create unpredictable workshop experiences that predictably work. Thank you again for tuning in. It's so great to spend some time with you, and I hope you're getting value from the show and it's helping you create some pretty amazing experiences for your participants, your colleagues, and your clients. This show is brought to you by my website, leannehughes.com. If you'd like to know a bit more about me and the work that I do, you can see some of my latest videos and blog posts and services out on that website. Now, I always love seeing and going to workshops and conferences where things are a little X factor, where the organisers have taken the time and energy out to really focus on the details. This reminds me of an earlier conversation I had with Jason Knight on the podcast a couple months back, where we explore that topic of, wouldn't it be great if workshops were more like weddings? If there was like care and effort put in. And there is one person I know that does this, and she runs the most amazing workshops, conferences and retreats and takes that time to put the care into the event. I'm delighted this week to bring my friend and amazing business legend, Angela Henderson from angelahenderson.com.au onto the show. Ange has an incredible energy, get up and go, no nonsense, get things done type of attitude, which is tremendously refreshing. She is a women's business coach, author, entrepreneur, blogger, mental health clinician, and as she says, most importantly, a mother. She runs Angela Henderson Business Consulting and can help you if you're overwhelmed, overworked, overtired, and you're struggling to fit it all in, whether business is good but you're not too sure how to grow it, whether you want to start a business but you have no idea where to start, or if you simply want an impartial voice to act as a mentor and growth facilitator. In this show, we talk about how she brings in a human element to everything she does, whether that's consulting, facilitating, coaching, or even marketing. She shares how she manages to stay consistent in her service-based business and even outlines details of the things that she's done in the past to make her conferences so much more memorable. So if you'd like ideas on how to create a standout experience for your next event, you will love listening to this one. Remember, if you'd like to continue the conversation when the podcast is over, you can join our community of over 220 facilitators from all over the world on the free Facebook group called The Flip Chart. Now, on there, we share all sorts of cool activities, videos and articles and ask questions. It's a very supportive community, just sharing what it takes to make our workshops different and engaging. Now, you can view a link to the group and other resources mentioned in this episode in the show notes at firsttimefacilitator.com/episode 82. Now, on to the show. I would love to welcome to the First Time Facilitator podcast, Angela Henderson from angelahenderson.com.au. Ange, it's so great to have you on the show.
Hello, Miss. It is lovely to be here and so lovely to reconnect with you. I love just hanging out with you and your vibrancy. So thank you so much for having me on board today.
Likewise. And for those that are listening in, we met for the first time at the We Are podcast conference last year, where I got to see you facilitate a workshop. And I love having guests on the show where I've seen them in action. I can just verify how great their energy is. But just to kick off, can you share with our listeners a bit about, you've got a really fascinating career history, a lot of interesting career pivots. Can you share some of those with our listeners?
Sure, yes. So I grew up in Canada. I'm a proud Canadian. I then moved down to Albuquerque, New Mexico, where again, you don't really do that to people in high school, but my parents thought it would be fun to do that. So I moved down to Albuquerque, New Mexico, where I completed my high school and then my undergrad in psychology and sociology. I moved over to Australia, where I did my master's of social work, and then moved back to North Carolina, where I did my clinical prac in mental health. So technically, I've been a licensed clinical social worker working with individuals with mental health, adult mental health, and child mental health. And I typically would diagnose them with, depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, autism, etc., and then either do the assessment and one-to-one therapy, or do the assessment and potentially lead them on to a psychiatrist to look at medication review, etc. So I have a huge passion when it comes to mental health. And then I moved back over to Australia because I married a Tasmanian. So that was sort of fun. And now I live in Queensland. I came back and worked in government. I still worked in government for up until 2 years ago. But it was my eldest son, Finley, who at time of recording, he's going to turn 10 this Sunday, which is very exciting. And when he was about 1, I just was looking at the toys one afternoon. And I was like, you know what? There's got to be more than electronic toys and battery-operated toys. And I just thought, as a child growing up in Canada, we were always outdoors in the snow or just in the mud or in the cornfields or doing something. And I thought, there's got to be a better way. Now, don't get me wrong. I still have toys that have batteries and they're operated for my children. But when I started my first business, that's when I started it, was through Finley and me. And I really wanted to focus on creating childhood memories through play, love, and travel. And we brought in products from around the world by pretty much independent designers to start with, where again, it was wooden toys to spark imagination, work on fine motor skill development, imaginary play, etc. And I still had that business going while I was working full-time in the government. Also through Finley and me, I became one of Australia's leading parenting bloggers. I was asked to work with Netflix as one of their 30 bloggers here in Australia and New Zealand. And then I worked with big international and national brands, which was super fun as another way to monetize the Finley and me brand. And then I got into consulting. I just looked at my diary, and over a couple of months, there was about 14, I think it was, coffee dates where people wanted to pick my brain. And I kind of had the aha moment and was like, well, if I charged people for my expertise in business after now being in it for almost a decade, I could have a second business. And that's how Angela Henderson Consulting kind of grew. And now I work specifically with women in business to really help move them from being stuck and overwhelmed and working in their business to helping them to gain clarity, the strategy they need, and the systems they need to grow 5, 6, and 7-figure businesses. So that's what I do now.
Oh my gosh, you have moved home so many times. That's really admirable, and, cross continents as well. I love you talk about how your different career pivots, as well as picking up on that question of when people are starting to pick your brain about content. That's one way to figure out what your expertise is. I think I get a lot of facilitators in the Facebook group called the Flip Chart, and they sort of ask, I don't know what area in particular to specialize in. I'm sure you get the same question for women that are starting small businesses, like, what should I start? And a good question is to ask yourself, what do people seek me out for? So, back in the mental health days, you would have run a few workshops and been in front of groups as well. Has that sort of given you appreciation for the work that you do now and the conferences and seminars that you speak at too?
Yeah, I definitely think it's where my foundations kind of stem from, was definitely speaking in front of different audiences, big and small, in regards to different mental health topics. I always still at that stage try to bring fun in it, but you're dealing with a completely different audience. A lot of them are very corporate, money-driven, data-driven, stats-driven, and that's fine. And so there is sometimes a time and place when I can bring humor into my workshops, where now the workshops that I run are with amazing, bright, vibrant, eager, action-taking women. We do get a few men, but predominantly women that attend the events. And there's just so much fun that I like to emerge, because I believe there's an essence of fun that is missing in our life at the moment. And so I try and bring that back in when I'm running workshops. And I also like to make sure that, again, people are having an experience and an interaction. And I believe that's where that human-to-human marketing comes into play when I'm working on my workshops, because it gives me the chance to allow myself, which is ultimately human-to-human marketing, to create. It pertains to creating an experience and an interaction with your brand. So yeah, injecting fun is something that's super important to me, which was very different to when I was running workshops with the government health here in Queensland.
Yeah, I know that when you say that there is a time and a place for things. And the one thing I remember sitting in your workshop last year at We Are Podcast, and I distinctly remember how you opened your presentation. And it was funny because you were talking about the human-to-human connection in Facebook groups. But what you were doing when you were leading that workshop was demonstrating how important the human connection is. So I remember your opening slide. It had things like the fact that you're from Canada, that you love eating Nutella, that your favorite color is pink. And I remember it because it was quite a different way of opening a workshop. Do you want to share a bit about how you create that human experience through the way that you deliver these types of workshops?
Yeah, so I guess it's about, to me, again, being memorable, and that I'm not just someone up here delivering a workshop, that I'm actually a human at the end of the day. And so that's why, again, I like to bring in that fun, but I also try to bring in those elements that people are going to remember me by. So I can't tell you how many times now people send me or tag me on Facebook with Nutella, do you know what I mean, recipes. I've gotten sent jars of Nutella. I've got sent Nutella hoodies, now 2 hoodies or jumpers, do you know what I mean, depending on where you're listening, over the last last little while. And it's because, again, I try to take that slightly different angle versus just kind of going like being the same. And I guess it kind of relates to the book, The Purple Cow by Seth Godin, which I also relate so much to that human to humanness, is that if you go to a workshop, just like Seth was talking about when they were doing this beautiful country drive in France, and there's these cows, they're brown cows, white cows, black cows, and they were really intriguing at the beginning, but they just became ordinary cows as they continued to drive. But if you were a purple cow, you would stand out, you would be remarkable, you would be remembered, you would create spunk, you would create an emotion that is connected with people. And so that's how I kind of like to run my workshops, is how can I leave people feeling like she wasn't just another facilitator, it wasn't just another workshop, but rather I become the purple cow that they remember post leaving that workshop.
It's really great criteria, having that purple cow, I guess, inform every single decision that you make. And I was on your website before and looking through photos of your conference from last year. And the images are just so enticing and attractive. You've got things like glitter cups, you've got flamingo cutouts. Can you share? We're not just talking about the way that you deliver, it's actually in the way that you design your whole event, the marketing behind it, the colors that you pick, everything. It's just, I love all the different touch points. Can you just share some more examples of kind of the things that you did at that conference last year and what people are in store for this year?
Yeah, so I run Australia's leading 4-day, 3-night women in business retreat here on the Gold Coast in Australia. It's a retreat, so it's only 50 people max, and I've done that on purpose already to kind of set the tone that I want it to be really intimate. I want relationships to be built. But other things that I do is I make sure that there's no barriers between attendee and speakers, and I've done that deliberately. So often I go to so many conferences, you've got a speaker's room, and that's okay, all right? So I just want to caveat, that's what you're doing, that's okay. I just want to give other ways that you might want to potentially maybe try things. So there's no wrong or right way because every audience is different. But you do go to like a speaker and then the speaker gets up and there's a speaker's room. And to me, I feel like there's a division amongst people right there, is that there's them and there's us. Whereas with me is the speakers, there's one speaker at each of my tables with the attendees. They eat lunch with us, morning tea with us, dinner with us. They come out on the boats with us. Everything is between speaker and attendee as equal playing fields. I also don't do VIPs, everyone's ticket remains the same. And so you can buy a ticket to work with me post the event, which is a little bit more expensive, but at the actual event, everyone's on the same playing field because I don't want a division of them versus us. So I've worked really hard right from the beginning to kind of break down those barriers and add that human element to make sure that people not just feel comfortable, but again, they're all as one versus, do you know what I mean? Like I said, those different layers of potentially just like ego maybe, or do you know what I mean, money or whatever that is. Like I don't want that. And what I do is I really focus on creating the personal element behind everything. So last year when everyone got to the hotel, I'd already gone into each of their hotel rooms. I had one of my designers create a personalized welcome gift with their business name, the year it was established. I had it wrapped in their room. I then had personalized cookies that were cut out based on our theme, which was flamingos, which had their name written on each of those, and they were boxed up individually. It was just about creating, again, that human-to-human marketing pertaining to the experience and the interaction one faces with a brand. So every touch point at that event, I wanted to be very special, not just collectively, but individually for people, because the whole essence of that particular retreat is really to be able to connect, to refocus, to learn and grow, because a lot of the people that I work with are mothers who don't get a lot of time off by themselves. So I not only want them to have the chance to learn from other people, but I want them to be able to connect, and I want them to kind of look at themselves individually. And I've done that by doing those personalized elements.
Wow. I love that little stealth mission that you did, going into every room and that welcome gift. That is just extra effort, but it is so worth it. I mean, not only to create that experience for your participants, but in a way it also is a marketing thing. Like if I went to a conference, I went into my room and I saw that, the first thing I'd be doing was like hopping onto Instagram and popping it onto stories and just telling everyone about it. Such a smart way to also make your guests feel welcome, but to market future events as well.
So often people are eager to create elements, so paper, pens, whatever, that has your brand on it. But the reality of it is there's no emotional connectiveness with that. I'll just pick up a pen. Yep, I use it because I need a pen. But if you have a pen with your name on it, and it's your branding and the year that you were established and it's all about you, you've got emotional connectiveness to that pen. You're not just going to throw it away willy-nilly. Mm-hmm. And that's why, again, by not doing workshop promo material that was around my brand. I did promo workshop material that was about their brand. And that when they shared that, they were able to share that, yes, through a marketing strategy technique there also, but they were sharing a piece of their business while at the same time going, look what Angela Henderson has done. So I feel like it's not just at the workshop, but it's my unique point of difference from a business consulting and coaching point of view is that, again, I'm not just being the brown and, black cow. I'm doing something slightly different.
Excellent. And you mentioned the people that attending your conference are mothers who are also, time poor, and you're a mother as well. You got 2 kids and you're still doing the stuff that goes beyond what the black and the brown cows do. So people listening to this thinking, hey, these are great ideas and I wish I could do this for a workshop coming up in 2 weeks, but I don't have the time. What would you say to that? How do you create the time and space to do all this cool stuff?
Well, I guess I call bullshit at the beginning because everyone has time if they choose to have the time, right? So I guess I look at things as coming down to choices. I don't have to go and do that personalization. I have a choice. I can get branded material for me or I can get branded material for them. I still need to do something for the workshop. So to me, I don't look at it as any extra work. I look at it as they still need a notepad. They still need a pen. They still need, instead of doing goodie bags, I'm just doing a personalized gift for them. So the time and energy that people take into getting freebies and stuff that go into these goodie bags, and I'm sorry, some of them suck, right? It's just like I feel like I get home, I dump it on my bed, and yes, you've ticked a box because it's a goodie bag, but it's plastic. Shit, I'm never going to use. Where I'm just like, if you would have taken that energy, not to mention the environmental resources, and put it into one really cool thing, you probably would have spent less time, but it still would have been more humanized. So I guess I call bullshit on the first stance there, Leanne, is that anyone can do it. It's about making choices. And I guess I look at that from my mindset, as I just go, I've got a choice to make, and anyone listening has choices to make.
Yep, I agree with that. I agree we've all got a choice. So it's also, I think, getting the idea and getting the awareness that things like this are possible, because I think we design our workshops and conferences based on the great things that we've seen. And if we haven't been exposed to like a conference,
totally,
we're just thinking, all right, well, the right thing to do is give everyone a USB in a brown paper bag because that's what everyone does.
And I do agree with that. I think there's that saying, you don't know what you don't know, right? And I think, again, it would become very much down to that, especially, depending on what countries you live in and how you consume information and what, you do. But I know in Australia, I'd say our goodie bags are probably a bit more leaner over here. Whereas when I've been to conferences in America, you're walking out with suitcases, right? They've got some pretty cool stuff over there. But again, if you think that that's what the norm is and you've never been exposed, 100%, how would you know what you don't know?
Yeah, and that's the purpose of getting people like you on the shows talking through this. I also had Travis Chappell, who we both also met during the podcasting conference. He talked about his retreat, cool people and cool places in Thailand, and having people like you on the show just gives us the exposure to, hey, this is what's going on internationally. This is the level that people are starting to expect. So hopefully it's having a knock-on effect. No matter what role you're in, if you're facilitating a local council meeting, guess what? There's elements that you can bring into that. So let's take a bit of a shift into the stuff that you do even before the conference has started is pretty X factor. Then you've got to get yourself prepared to actually getting up in front of the room full of women or whoever you're delivering to and delivering a killer speech or workshop. How do you prepare for that moment?
Listen, I'm probably not your typical, preparer here, Leanne. Listen, a lot of what I do is winging it, 100%. I've never been trained in speaking, never taken a workshop, never watched a video. I just get up there and do my thing. That maybe has some good elements about it. It could have some bad elements about it. But for me, I just kind of go, you like me or you don't, right? You get what I get. So typically when I go on stage, I take my shoes off. I'm normally in flip-flops. I flip-flops to the side and I'm just me, So I don't really have any really great tips or skills that I can say other than I just show up and I'm me. How do I prepare? There's on the occasion, if I'm preparing really new content, I will record myself on Zoom and then I play that back just to kind of see where my mannerisms and stuff are and what I could potentially beef up. But then I kind of go, okay, well, I've done that 2 or 3 times. I'll reread through it. It is what it is. And more times than not, the feedback that I've gotten from people is that, again, that I'm a memorable speaker. They use the word authentic and that I just show up and be me. So I don't know if that's a lot of words of wisdom for your people out there, but there's not much preparation. I look for things that are fun. Like you said, with the Nutella, the pink, I use GIFs. But there's not anything out of the ordinary. Bright colors, because that's part of who my brand is and my brand, my brand voice. But yeah, there's nothing like I really plan to do. I also try to make it interactive so that I'm asking open-ended questions. Or if I see kind of people starting to nod, I'll be like, I'll know then to inject Do you know what I mean? Some conversation, some dialogue. But like I said, I don't have any particular tips and tricks on that one, Leanne.
A lot of the previous guests I've had on the show is like, it's important to be yourself and be authentic. And it sounds counterintuitive, but sometimes it's really hard or to have the confidence just to be yourself, because I guess in that the mindset we have is that when you're in front of people, people are judging you. It's like, wow, I'm actually real and raw up here. So a lot of the time, I guess even from my personal experience, I over prepare because I want to be seen as really professional. And then sometimes it can be perceived as being too professional and not real enough. And then you lose that connection. So I find it a really hard line to juggle sometimes between being professional and having your shit together and also being authentic. So for you to just be able to do that is really admirable. And I'm going to also find a parallel here, because I also notice I see you often on Facebook and Instagram live, and that just shows me how great you are at, you say winging it, but it just comes naturally to you. Do you think going live on social media has helped you go live in real time?
Absolutely. I think it comes down to practice. The more practice you do, you just naturally become better at anything that you do, whether or not it's cooking, writing when kids start writing, walking as a baby, like the more practice you have, the better you get at it. So yes, I definitely think by going live in my groups, also I have my own podcast, the Business and Life Conversations podcast, that again, the more I use my voice, the more confident I become just by default. But again, you'll see me on my lives. I'm in a hoodie, I'm in my flip-flops. I've got no shoes. You know what I mean? Like, I'm the same way there as I pretty much on stage. If it's not my own event, I do make sure that I'm dressed accordingly and I've got makeup and that I'm, there because it's not my event and I want to represent whosever business it is. But typically at my own event, you will find me in flip-flops and a t-shirt in October when I deliver my event, because that's just who I am. And, it doesn't mean, I know some people struggle with that, Leanne, because they're like, oh my goodness. I'll give you an example. When there's a lot of people who go, oh my goodness, what do I need to wear to your event? And I was like, you could wear a suit if you choose to. You can wear flip-flops if you choose to. You can wear shorts. I don't care. I just want you to be comfortable. And they're like, no, but we need a dress code. Like, that's what. And I'm like, well, there is no dress code. Just wear what makes you comfortable. A lot of people struggle with that because they're going, we're coming to a retreat. It has to be a certain way. And I guess it's important just to give yourself permission that things never have to be a certain way, as long as you're still able to connect with your audience and deliver on what you said you were going to deliver on.
Again, it's coming from the assumptions of things that we've been to before. So I love that you just got this completely different mindset and just throwing out all the assumptions of the way that things are meant to be. That's really admirable. Hey, just talking about flip-flops, and I just got some imagery here because I know that you travel a lot to other conferences. So you went to the Maldives. Was that last year?
Yeah, last year, and I'm due at time of recording. I leave in 2 weeks' time to go again.
I think we're releasing this podcast in a couple of weeks. So hopefully if people can start following you, what's your Instagram handle, Ange?
My Instagram handle is Angela Henderson Consulting. So yes, I will be doing stories and some goodness over there on my little Maldives. I say holiday, but it really is. It's a 7-day mastermind. Yes, I promise. There's learning that goes on.
You really demonstrate that whole pay to play, and the amount of conferences that you've been to, both in Australia and internationally, is pretty amazing. So you've sat as a participant in workshops. You've also delivered them. What do you think the key skills are of your favorite speakers and trainers and facilitators? What do you see them do that you try and do more of as well?
Listen, I would say a lot of what I do is I've learned from others. So for example, Chris Ducker ran an event that one of my first biggest ever amount of money I spent, it was about $13,000 I paid to go to his 50 people, 5-day business mastermind in Cebu, Philippines, like I said, with Chris Ducker. And I just remember going, okay, I want to do something like this one day. And then I started it last year, right? So Chris kept it small, intimate, right? But what I then did though is I then brought in who I am, but also more kind of like James Shremko, who's my own coach, right? Where he's the one who I'm going to the Maldives with, really again, laid back, flip-flops, but you can still learn so much. So I took the retreat type of concept that Chris did, that really intimate, environment where the speakers and the attendees emerge themselves together. But I've given that twist of flair, do you know what I mean, with Shremko's kind of laid backness. He's a surfer. So I kind of taken bits and pieces from different people over the years and then just put that flair in with my own flair to come up with my own unique event.
That's so cool. On this podcast, my aim is for diversity. And I actually love it when I get counterintuitive advice from one facilitator from one episode to another, because I think it's up to the listener then to think what actually works for them, pick out those key ingredients and craft their own amazing workshop or conference from that too. So it's great that you've mentioned that. You do a lot of different things. So you're a consultant. You also coach people one-on-one, and That's really interesting. You've got clients from around the world that you need to coach through Skype, which is a very different medium to stepping on stage and having a great environment with all these encouraging women around. What do you do? Like, how do you sort of run your coaching sessions via webinar? How do you keep those engaging, moving along, keeping clients accountable?
So there's a variety of different things. So obviously it just depends on how best they learn. Some people will want to have regular contact with me and I just pop it in my diary for those that are my one-to-one coaching clients and I just make sure it happens. Sometimes I pick up the phone because that's easiest for them and how it works with their families. Other times I'll just do a quick Loom video for them. Other times we do our session on Zoom. I just use it based on how people learn, what's going on with their family dynamics, what's going on with their business, where are they located, what time is it, and all those things. And then I just make sure that it's unique because there's too often I see coaches who try to do one thing for all people, and I don't think that's actually going to work because there's no business that is ever the same. So as a business consultant, I make sure that as part of my initial assessment with the clients that I work with, is I really try to understand and unpack how best they learn, what their platform of choice is, what their home dynamic is. So is it best to email them in the morning versus email them at night, etc. And I just create their own individualized plan around their individualized needs in business and home life.
Yeah, so good. It's like picking the medium for the right audience, which is it's my number one thing when it comes to delivering any type of workshops or bringing it back into workshops is who is in the audience, what's the best way they receive information, and targeting my communication style to hit that. So it's so great and refreshing to hear that you do it for your clients as well. If people are starting to follow you on Instagram when you're in the Maldives, they're going to see, I don't know if you're going to switch your phone off, because I know in Brisbane you are so consistent with getting onto social channels. Like every single day there is a message from you, or I don't know if you schedule your stuff or you're doing it live. How do you consistently show up, particularly for those of us in facilitation and service-based businesses that want to start using social? How do you consistently show up? It's staggering. I'm so impressed.
It goes down to choice, right? I have a choice to wake up and do this, or I have a choice not to. I have a choice to hire someone. I have a choice not to. But so for me, it's always been about, that was one of the things that I don't even remember who I first heard that about, just being consistent. Because the more consistent you are, the more trust you build, the more authority you build, the more credibility you build. Like everything collectively goes hand in hand. And I don't just show up just to go like, oh, hey guys, I ate this burger and it tasted really great. Like there's always still strategy behind whatever I'm utilizing, because if not, I won't. There'll be days where I don't post on socials because I've got nothing that's going to help people or move them forward. But for me, it's just about, again, choosing the platforms where my ideal client is and where I'm also happy and find joy. So you don't normally see me over on LinkedIn, even though everyone keeps telling me that I should be doing things over there. But LinkedIn doesn't bring me joy and happiness. I don't know if my clients are really there, but Instagram does, my podcast does, Facebook does. So that's where you'll typically find me. So I always say, look at things where you're going to find your joy. Second, I say, if you're going to start wanting to be consistent, just choose one platform and be consistent. Don't try and then overwhelm yourselves by trying to be on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, freaking everything else. Just to do one and do it really well. Because the way the algorithms go and everything, if you start messing with the algorithms and you post consistent for a week and then you stop and then you start again, you've got to retrain algorithms and everything behind that. So just stay consistent on one, and then when you have time, bring in the other. The other thing is that, again, look at outsourcing. You can't do everything yourself. So I have an intern, a beautiful intern that works with me. She'll do my scheduling on my Facebook for me. I've also got another beautiful community manager that does my scheduling on my group. But the rule there is neither of them are to comment. So if there's a comment or a question, they either rephrase that. They're not to comment, do you know what I mean? And like say, oh, Angela said this or this. They need to comment based on their own thoughts and opinions. And I will come in and then respond if necessary, right? So even though things are scheduled, I still want them to know that it's me that's responding, because I know there's a lot of people in the US that I've just found out, I didn't even know that this was possible, that people are having their VAs sign in under their own personal Facebook accounts and respond as if it's that other person, right? I won't name names, but I know at least 6 big people in the world of entrepreneurship who are doing this. And for me, that just doesn't sit with me, all right? If you're doing that, that's fine. But for my own ethos and for me, all about human-to-human connectiveness, I don't want my intern posting my post and then responding as Angela Henderson, because she's not Angela Henderson. Mm-hmm. So I say if they are to respond, they're to respond with their own names so that people know it's coming from either Aaron or it's coming from Katie, but it's not to be responsive, Angela said, or this is Angela's bot, right? Don't get me wrong, there's a time and place for automation too, but just that. So number one is be consistent. by choosing the platform that finds you joy and happiness, start off with one thing first and then bring on others and then outsource. So I get a lot of grief by saying outsource overseas to somewhere like the Philippines, but I've got no shame in it because of the women that work with me from the Philippines. Like I said, I've also got Australians. Katie is Australian. My podcast team is Australian. I hire a lot of people locally, but I also hire based on job description and job need and job necessity. And so in the Philippines, I don't necessarily need someone with certain skill sets, so I can pay them less. But the reality of it is, though, is the women that I employ in the Philippines make more money than their husbands. They've made more money from me in the last, decade than they have ever, because they're able to stay at home with their children. They're able to, have a healthy, environment. They're not off having to sell food from a cart like some of them have been. And like I said, they make more money. So I look at when you're looking at hire, in order to be consistent, is that hire where you can afford right now and make sure that you treat who, no matter what, is humans and kindly and politely. And just to know that, again, you're supporting other human beings, to make their life better.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think often at my old company, we had a lot of teams in different locations and people were like, oh, how do I lead these teams? And people in other areas and countries. And it's just the same as managing a person that's sitting next to you in a cubicle. You treat them the same way. Yeah, it takes extra effort to engage with them via video or having conversations, but you don't treat them any differently to someone that is sitting next door. So I think that's really good advice, that just sticking strong with treating them as humans, kindly, with respect. And I think it's great that with this global economy, we can get people that suit the skill set that we need. And I think my favorite, I remember when I started outsourcing, it was to someone in India. And I used to love at the end of the day, sort of sending over a graphic image or something and then waking up in the morning because of the time difference and having it delivered to me. It was like a 24-hour operation. It's so cool.
Yep. And things keep going. Your website, for example, is open 24 hours a day. There's no reason why the other parts of your business can't be working while you're sleeping. And that, again, if it's cost effective for you and your family, I say rock and roll.
Rock and roll. That's excellent. Great note to end on. And if people would like to join your Facebook group, find out more about you, connect with you, follow your experience, we've mentioned your Instagram handle. Where else can they find you?
Yeah, so you can listen if you do have a business and just like to have a good chat and listen to some great strategy. You can find me over at my podcast on all pretty much major platforms. And you just need to search Business and Life Conversations with Angela Henderson. You can also, as you mentioned, find me in my very active Facebook community. We're almost about to hit 6,000 members and it's super active, which I love. And that's called the Australian Business Collaborative. Now that also, even though it says it's an Australian Business Collaborative, we've got businesses from around the world there. So make sure to join there. I love connecting with new people and just interacting. It's one of my big passions in life and brings me joy and happiness. And you can also just find, if you're looking for other business tools or resources or just need some help or would like to book a 30-minute discovery call to chat about your business and your struggles and where you need to go, feel free to head to angelahenderson.com.au and just book in for a free 30-minute chat there and we can go from there.
Amazing. And of course, we'll link to all of those links in the show notes. And I think just to call out your Facebook group, if you do have a business or you're wanting to create a community, and we talked about role modeling on previous experience, I would suggest joining Ange's group because I look at what she does in terms of the questions she puts out, the images she puts out as inspiration for my own group. I'm not close. She's got 6,000, but I think it's just, if you need some inspiration on how to engage in a human way with your tribe, definitely look at Ange's group for inspo. And it's been so great reconnecting with you. And you're just down the road. Well, not really, but you're in Brisbane as well. So we'll definitely have to grab a wine face-to-face.
Yeah, I think we need to catch up with a few of our other acquaintances, but definitely I'd love to catch up.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Have an awesome day.
Cheers. Hey, thanks so much for sticking around. You've reached the end of another episode of the First Time Facilitator podcast. Connect with the show at firsttimefacilitator.com. or follow me on Instagram at Leanne Hughes to find out what I'm up to during the week. If you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to share it with someone who will also appreciate the insight. And make it easier for yourself and subscribe to the show in your podcast player of choice. Thank you so much for listening and chat to you next week.